I'm back from West by God, Virginia, and I had a great time. I hope you did too. I hope you enjoyed your Thanksgiving. Shout out to Marshall and Ohio State. I had a good time touring those campuses last week while I was out of town. I hope you guys enjoyed those videos, and I hope you had a good Thanksgiving, whatever it was you got to do, spending time with friends, family. Hope you got you some good food, maybe did a little bit of shopping and enjoyed maybe some time off from work or school, whatever the case. But it's time to get back on the grind. I'm here today to update my top 10 video or top 25 ranking, whatever you want to call it. And 2 of my top 10 teams lost this past weekend. So there will be some changes in Uncle Lou's rankings this week. And when we get towards the top of the poll, I'm going to take a few minutes and talk about Ohio State. What's going to happen with them? I'll try to let you know right now.
I'm doing LouTube! South Carolina is just a joke of a team.
Hey, good morning. It's Uncle Lou here. Yeah, that's right. It's me, Uncle Lou. And I'm live for you on LouTube today. Thanks for watching. I really appreciate it also. And 2, in addition to that as well, hey, subscribe to this channel if you're not already. Did you know I post college football videos almost every single day of the year? It's true. And some of them are even watchable. You can let me know in the comments down below what you think about this video, and more importantly, what you think about my rankings. 1 through 10. I'll put up and discuss and sort of try to let you know why I have those teams ranked where I do. And then at the end of the video, I'll just pop 11 through 25 up on the screen. But in the comments, let me know where you think I'm wrong. Let's go. All right, coming in at number 10 in my ranking this week. Been a while since this team's been in the top 10, but I got to go all the way back to week 1 or 2. Oklahoma. They didn't play this past weekend. They were supposed to play West Virginia. The game was canceled due to coronavirus. They do play this coming up week at Baylor. It's really attrition, right? People forgot about Oklahoma. They lost a couple of games early in the season. Everybody wrote them off for good reason. And I don't think there's any way they're getting into the playoff. I've heard some people talking about that lately, all kinds of weird scenarios where Oklahoma or somebody from the Big 12 gets back in. It's not happening. But I think I do think Oklahoma deserved the sort of verbal pounding they got during the first month of the season for dropping those 2 games. But I think that caused people to forget about Oklahoma a little bit. Maybe maybe you stopped watching them or paying attention to them or whatever. Are they a great team? No, there's not very many great teams this year or any year for that matter. Their offense isn't quite as good as what we've seen it be the last several years. Their defense, I think, is probably a little bit better. But the point is, they sort of played themselves out of contention early on, at least playoff contention. And when you're Oklahoma and you've made the playoffs 3-4 years in a row, whatever it is, that tends to be the expectation. And I think a lot of people forgot about them. I think they are a borderline top 10 team. I think a case can be made to have them maybe as high as 9 or 8, and a case can be made to have them still as low as maybe 13 or 14. There's a large group of teams really from about 9 through 15 that you can sort of just kind of mix around almost anywhere you want. You can find a reason to put 5 or 6 of those teams really anywhere in the 9 to 15 or 16 spot. I've got Oklahoma at number 10. It's time to maybe start paying a little bit more attention to them, or at least quit beating them up for those 2 early losses. They've been on a roll since then. Would have been a good game, I think, against West Virginia. West Virginia's got the best defense in the Big 12. Oklahoma, offensively, we know what they can do. Would have been a good game. We didn't get to see it. Maybe we'll get to see them play this weekend against Baylor, a team that has struggled this year. Oklahoma, I would expect to win that game fairly easily, but we'll see. But welcome back, Sooners, number 10. All right, get out your typing fingers, but at number 9, I've got UGA. Hey, I've got Georgia 45-16 win over South Carolina this past weekend. They got Vanderbilt coming up here this Saturday. Georgia's got 2 losses to 2 top 5 teams. One of them's the number 1 team, Alabama. One of them is Florida. They're 5-6, depending on where you might think they should be ranked. Now, those weren't really close games, particularly the Alabama game. In the second half, they just blew us away. The Florida game, I think, wasn't even as close as the score indicated. I think Florida was a lot better than Georgia, but still 2 losses to 2 pretty good teams. And again, if you want to tell me Georgia should be 14, fine. You want to tell me they should be 8, okay, fine. 8-14. Again, it's hard to rank these teams. Georgia's a pretty good team. They've looked better the last 2 weeks, I think, than they looked at the beginning of the year. I've got them sitting at number 9. Number 8, I've got Indiana. They didn't play this past weekend, and guess what? They don't play this coming weekend either. The Big Ten is a mess with this schedule, and we're going to talk about it more when we get to Ohio State. But no game for Indiana this past weekend. No game this coming up weekend. Cincinnati's in the same boat. I have them at 7. They were unable to play this past weekend. Now they're unable to play again this coming weekend. Things could change. Some of these teams are looking for ways to rearrange things. So by the time you see this video, maybe 1 or 2 of these teams has something scheduled or worked out. But at the time of recording, neither one of these 2 teams have anything scheduled for this coming week. Number 6, I've got Florida. I've got the same conundrum with Texas A&M and Florida that I've had the last 2 or 3 weeks. I think Florida's probably a little bit better than Texas A&M right now. If Florida and Texas A&M were playing tomorrow, I'd probably pick Florida to win the game. My issue is that they each have 1 loss. They played each other, and Texas A&M beat them. Florida's loss is to Texas A&M. Texas A&M's loss is to Alabama. I don't really know if you're going to be fair at all when it comes to rankings. If you got 2 teams in the same conference with identical records, and one of those teams beat the other, seems like you'd have to have the team that won ranked ahead. If someone again, I'm not going to, if they played tomorrow, I'd pick Florida. I really would. I'll give you an example here where I think Georgia would beat Indiana. Does anyone disagree? I've still got Indiana ranked ahead of Georgia because Indiana only has 1 loss, and it was to Ohio State by 7 points. Georgia's got 2 losses by double digits. So it wouldn't make any sense right now to me to put Georgia ahead. I mean, I don't know. So just because I think a team is better doesn't necessarily mean I have them ranked higher. I mean, polls, rankings, in my opinion, are a combination of where you think a team should be versus where you think a team deserves to be, and you have to find kind of a middle ground. If Texas A&M loses a game, clearly Florida will jump them. If Florida beats Alabama, I'm going to have to move Florida ahead of Texas A&M clearly at that point. So no one should be upset about Florida being a spot behind Texas A&M. Florida's got Bama coming up here in a couple of weeks. Beat Bama, not only will you jump Texas A&M, you'll be in the top 4 and on your way to the playoffs. So don't worry about where you're ranked right now. But I've got Florida at 6. They beat Kentucky 34-10 this past weekend. They play at Tennessee this coming weekend. A sinking ship, Tennessee. What a great game that'll be. Texas A&M beat LSU 20-7. They play at Auburn this coming weekend. And time for the top 4. I might have switched it up a little bit, but no big surprises, I don't think. I've got Clemson currently sitting at 4. Their only loss is to Notre Dame. This past weekend, they beat Pitt 52-17. Trevor Lawrence finally got to play again, and he lit it up. He had a bunch of touchdowns and 1,000,000 yards. He looked great. They play at Virginia Tech this coming weekend. I've got them at 4. I've got Ohio State at 3. They couldn't play this past weekend. They're scheduled to play at Michigan State this coming weekend, and they really, really, really need to play that game. They really need to play that game. I'm going to talk about that in just a second. Notre Dame, I've got it 2. They beat North Carolina 31-17. This was a good game in the first half, a close game, a competitive game. Notre Dame just too much for them in the second half. North Carolina couldn't get anything going offensively, and Notre Dame sort of pulled away a little bit late in that game and won 31-17. They play home against Syracuse this coming weekend. And, of course, Bama, I've got it number 1. They absolutely dismantled the barn 42-13 in the Iron Bowl this past weekend. They play at LSU this coming weekend. Not good if you're LSU right now. You're a terrible team. Most of your team has opted out, quit, or give up, or some combination of those 3 things. And this is a revenge game for Alabama because they lost to you last year. They might beat you by 40, and I'm not even kidding. So there it is. That's the top 10. Again, at the end of the video, I'll put up 11 through 25 so you can see what I think about the rest of the teams and where they should be ranked. But let me talk about Ohio State here for a second. Ohio State could be in trouble. The Big Ten, along with a lot of the conferences this year, made a set of rules heading into the season about what you had to do in order to qualify for your conference championship game. And one of the things that the Big Ten said was, you got to play, I think it was 6 games, right? You got to play a minimum of 6 games to qualify for the Big Ten title. Ohio State might not get to 6 games. You look at this week's game at Michigan State, it's 50-50 on right now when this game's going to get played. As of now, it's still scheduled. We'll keep an eye on it. Ohio State is ate up with the coronavirus. The week after that is when it could get really interesting. They're supposed to play Michigan. Michigan's playing for nothing this year. They have no reason to play anymore. They're terrible. They're not any good. If they play, Ohio State will beat them by 40. This would be the biggest cold-blooded rivalry move in the history of college football if Michigan cancels that game on Ohio State thus keeping Ohio State out of the Big Ten title game, which in my opinion would then keep them out of the playoffs. I don't think an Ohio State team, no matter how good anybody thinks they are, I don't think an Ohio State team that plays 5 games and does not even play in their conference championship game has any shot at all to make the playoffs. I know they're ranked in the top 4 right now. The playoff poll comes out tonight. They'll probably be ranked in the top 4 again. After these conference championship games are played in a couple of weeks, if Ohio State is sitting home, unable to play in their conference championship game because they didn't meet the minimum number of games required to get there, they're not going to finish in the top 4. And I don't think they should. I don't think there's a set number of games. A lot of people talked heading into the season when the Big Ten said they were playing 8 games, or when the Pac-12 said they were playing 6 or 7, or even the SEC playing 10. A lot of people said there needs to be a minimum number of games that people need to play to get into the playoffs. I still don't think they should have set a minimum number. As we've seen, it's been hard to play a complete season this year. Just this past weekend, we had 19 games canceled, and I don't think anybody will be surprised if that number is even higher for this weekend coming up. But the point is, once you do get to the end of the season and you see how many games a lot of these teams were able to play, it's easier then to judge that against other teams who maybe weren't able to play as many games, in this case, Ohio State. And I'm going to use Cincinnati as an example here. And I've never been a believer of the group of 5 getting into the playoff. I don't think they would ever win it. And so therefore, I don't really think there's a point in putting them in. Now, if the playoff ever expands to 8 teams or something like that, and you want to give one of those spots to the group of 5, fine. Generally speaking, I've always been one that thought that they really didn't need to be in there. How could you justify, though, if Cincinnati is sitting there at the end of the year at 10-0 or 11-0 with a conference title, how could you justify leaving them out if you put in a 5-0 Ohio State team who didn't even play in their conference title game? Never mind what you would do with a 1-loss Texas A&M who didn't play. You know, Texas A&M would be 10-1. 10-1. You're going to put a 5-0 Ohio State ahead of a 10-1 Texas A&M. And again, like I mentioned earlier, when you talk about ranking like Florida versus Texas A&M or Georgia versus Indiana, there's 2 things I look at. Who do I think is better? And which one deserves to be ranked higher? It's got to be a combination of the 2. Again, you might think Ohio State is one of the best 4 teams in America. You might think they're one of the best 2. I don't know. I'm not saying you're wrong necessarily. But deserves has got to play a part here. And if for whatever reason, Ohio State is only able to play 5 games and not even compete in their conference championship game, I don't think they deserve to get into the playoffs versus what we've seen these other teams do in a 9, 10, 11 game schedule. I just don't. Is it fair? Well, no, but college football by nature isn't fair. There's 130 teams. They can't all play each other. We rank teams based on a poll of media writers or college head coaches or playoff committees. Of course, it's not fair. If you play 5 games, you don't deserve to get in. And we could be looking at a situation here where an Indiana team who lost to Ohio State goes to the Big Ten title game instead of Ohio State because Ohio State doesn't meet the minimum number of games. One other thing to keep an eye on here, and I've not ruled this out, I don't think you should either. What would happen if the Big Ten, as a conference, changed the rules now or next week? Once it becomes obvious, if it does become obvious that Ohio State's not going to qualify for the Big Ten title game because of the minimum game requirement, what if the Big Ten came out and changed the rules and allowed a 5-0 Ohio State into the Big Ten title game? Can you imagine the things that would be said, the anger? It would be. I would like to see it happen just so I can witness the sort of anger that goes on online around that. But to me, that's an interesting story to keep an eye on as we head through the last couple of weeks of this season. Is Ohio State? I think Ohio State needs to play both of their games and a Big Ten title game in order to get into the playoffs. We'll see. Like I said, I'm not very confident that they'll be able to play this weekend against Michigan State. Supposed to play Michigan next week. What if, if Ohio State is ready to play and Michigan comes out and says we can't play? Now, of course, they're going to say coronavirus, but the conspiracy theories and people are going to say, oh, they're purposely doing this to try to screw Ohio State. It would be one of the most dickheaded rivalry moves of all time, and it would be it would be entertaining. Anyway, that's my top 10 for this week. I'll put 11 through 25 up on the screen now. Have a good morning.